you a bit of background. Some of this background you may know, some of it in the age of WhatsApp delivered sense of history that we have, we often don't know about. So I think that here's the first thing that you should know, that there are about 200 million Dalits in India. They're the lowest caste of Hindus, against whom who have typically been the most discriminated part of Indian society. Now, the session's name is Ways of Finding Inclusion, but as we discussed earlier, I think a big part of the session is going to be about exclusion, because that is the reality of Dalits in India. So we will be discussing a lot of the exclusion that prevails in this day, and Martin and Sivkami will tell us how that is playing out in society, in politics as well. This book, which has been edited by Martin, he was kind enough to give me a copy and sign it. I haven't yet gone through all of it, but basically it is a listing of all the violence, atrocities against Dalits over the years. Not exhaustive, but there's still quite heck of a lot of it. That's coincidental, because I was going to give you some background to the violence that still exists. In a decade to 2016, crimes against Dalits went up 25%. Cases pending investigation rose 99%. And convictions declined by 7 percentage points over this period. 2016, because of 2017 and 2018, no data has been released by the government. And like farmer suicides, these are inconvenient data, so the government, in fact, often doesn't release these data. The other thing that has happened, of course, is that there has been very much more education, literacy among Dalit and the lower caste. But what has happened along with that education and literacy is that there has been a greater clashing with the upper caste. I was telling them only day before yesterday, before coming here, I read about it, how in Madhya Pradesh there was a bridegroom who was pulled off the horse and beaten simply for daring to ride a horse in his wedding. In Karnataka, where I live, every week we keep hearing these. There were attacks on Dalits because they dared to come and ask for a haircut in a village. They dared to try to use a well and these kind of things. That's the backdrop against which we'll have this discussion. We'll begin with Martin, and we'll again ask him to provide some context. In 1986, you lived through what is called the Golana massacre. Four of Martin's friends, people he knew, were killed at a time when he was encouraging Dalit farmers, if I'm right, to fight for their rights. What has changed since then, and has anything changed at all? So can you give us a sense of, has there been greater inclusion or not?
So I think what one of the change which you can see is that you can see more and more Dalits are getting organized against the violence. That one thing I have been able to see. To the extent that today, if you see one of the most well-organized movements are there in the country, they are the Dalits. Whether it is fighting against the Supreme Court or whether against the central government, but the level of consciousness is very high. That one change definitely you can see. But the second change, which on the reverse side, is that the violence has increased. Earlier it was out of untouchability, but now there's one more factor, which is jealousy. Because you will see that some of the Dalits who are into good positions, better educated, which is not so especially among the so-called upper castes, especially under the OBC, right? So the jealousy factor plays a very important role. And the third thing I would say that that is across affecting everyone is the lawlessness which is going up in the country. Yeah, we saw about the Hyderabad, but today what we have not discussed enough is the Unnao rape victim. She died today morning in the hospital. Yeah, she was burnt by the rapists. So this is the book which basically I wrote to say that in 2014 national elections, the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes reserved seats, maximum seats went to the NDA or the BJP, But during 2014 and 18, the atrocities have gone up, right? So there is one of your tool, whether it is representation or whether it is your political participation, that has failed to get benefits for you. So these are some of the changes and the benefits. So I would say the struggle has intensified.
Shivakami, you quit after nearly 30 years in the Indian Administrative Services. For those of you who don't know, she was an IAS officer for nearly 3 decades. And then she quit, I think, essentially to write about Dalit and tribal issues, political and social issues. She was, if I'm not mistaken, you were the first Tamil Dalit woman to write a novel. Which of course I think, that novel I think created a bit of a furore within the Dalit movement itself, because there was some challenge to the patriarchy among the movement itself at that point of time. So she's fought elections, she's founded a political party which she actually runs right now. Has politics then been a way of inclusion in Tamil Nadu?
Yeah. Before that, I have been attending the sessions, about totally 6 sessions I attended in Goa Lit Fest. So I want to reflect on those sessions in my own way. According to me, Dalits, they represent, or they are the symbols of the unfinished work of decolonization and democracy. Even today, because sometimes people, they are affected because they are directly hit, but if only they care to read history, they would really find out there is a constant colonization going on steadily, deeply in rural India, a village within the village. The Dalit village is colonized by the main village. They supply the labor, and we call it as a feudal structure, and we did nothing to break that system. I look at my mirror image, and then mirror image says, Sivakami, you are too serious and you are very negative, and you want things to happen in a very speedy manner. But I see things moving very, very slow, even among the youngsters, and there is no open discussions taking place about how to grapple the caste system and how do we come out of it. In one of the earlier sessions, Mr. Guha was saying, even in Harvard, people move in herds, like Tamil herd and Andhra herd or Indian herd or some things. Even in any get-togethers, you see people move in herds of the same caste or same language, and we call this as culture, tradition, and commonalities, and we feel comfortable. The comfortability comes out of your basic insecurity, because you are not able to face situations strongly and boldly. And then why don't you try living in a Dalit village? That is really exposure to community, because that means, another session I heard, I think Priya Gopal, she was mentioning that colonization, against colonization, women participated, and that they got the education, that there are groups among them also oppressed, and they started looking at it. True, they only look at it. They extend verbal sympathies, but they are not willing to forego their privileges. So if you are not willing to forego your privileges and also your discomfort, and try moving with the ordinary people for a change, then how would you ever learn? Only when you are directly hit, you will learn. So the inclusion comes not on the part of the Dalits, it is on the part of the caste Hindus. They seclude themselves. They are behind a barred door. It never gets opened. Even it may fall on its own, it will fall on the Dalits and 17 people died in Coimbatore recently. So therefore, the responsibility of decolonization, as Martin has correctly said, it's on the shoulders of the Dalits. We spend our money, we spend our energy, we spend our whole time fighting against it for the sake of the entire community. We want to make other people happy, other people comfortable, moving with others. So therefore, inclusion is a concept. I think it should be thrown open to everyone, not to the Dalits alone. So they should also, because I have never read an autobiography of an author who openly admits, yes, my family, followed the caste system, and we were the oppressors, and then we did this to the people, and as a landlord, my grandfather murdered some Dalits. Nobody agrees. Everybody wants to step into the shoes of the victims, and they want to sympathize with them. So why don't you step into the shoes of the oppressor and see what is happening inside? At least we will know what is in his mind, and you openly admit it. So that kind of autobiography I am still looking forward to read. So I'll.
Very well said. I think we would all like to see that autobiography if somebody is going to write that. To come back to the question of politics again, how much has politics been as a way of inclusion? Now, there have been many more Dalit politicians, many more Dalits have voted for the BJP and Narendra Modi than ever before. So take us through some of this, both of you. And I also want to ask you the whole question of marginalized communities trying to make common ground with each other. We have seen in Maharashtra, certainly, Muslims and Dalits coming together. You have also experienced this, and I think you're involved in some of this as well. So let's have your perspective on the political aspects of inclusion.
Dalit politics is not a very formal politics, I should say, because there are two categories of politics. One is formal and other one is informal. Mostly we are all engaged in informal politics because Ambedkar has shown that way. He arranged protests, mobilized people. That were only 4 in his lifetime. One was the Mahat lake. He arranged people to take water from the Mahat lake, and that created a problem there in the local community. And second is Kalaram temple entry. And later he discarded that as a futile exercise because he found out that he is a Buddhist by the time, and he didn't want to enter Hindu temples anymore. And third one was the Bombay movement against Koti system. So because of his, you must compare what Gandhi had organized just a few years before and what Ambedkar had organized, how he mobilized people. Gandhi mobilized all the zamindars because they were paying tax to the British, and then the zamindars stopped paying the tax. Probably the British will leave the country and go away because there is no source for them to run the administration. But Ambedkar thought about the landless laborers, because the landless laborers are oppressed by the zamindars, and if they don't cooperate, and probably there will be a much bigger force fighting the British as well as the landlords. So he thought about that, and he organized a rally in 1920 in Bombay. So Gandhi's movement, I think 15,000 people participated, and Ambedkar, with the poor resources, he could organize 20,000 people. As a result of that, Koti system was abolished. Why I'm trying to say that is a large mobilization of people and the awareness about their rights is still taking place. The younger generation is joining, and our school textbooks are giving a different interpretation of politics. For example, when I told my brother, see, I'm going to start a party, then he said, oh, you're going to start a party, who will vote for you, he said. Because immediately we relate to power politics of election, MLA, MP, and all that. Of course, it is also there, part of the political system. But the basic work, even if you become a MLA and go to the assembly, what can I do as a single member or as a member of a political party which doesn't have an agenda for the Dalits? So therefore it is a futile exercise. And Ambedkar correctly guessed that, and he wanted the double voting system for the Dalits, and it is a far-fetched dream for the Dalits as on today. So therefore, our movements are basically for land, because we, it's in a postmodern concept, we put it this way. After all, if you go to power, what would you ask for the Dalits? We would ask for land for the landless, house for the houseless, and basic amenities in the villages, like drinking water, electricity, roads, schools, hospitals, etc. And also, probably we would ask, some share in the governmental posts and whatnot. So we directly ask for that now, because that is the way that we create awareness, because otherwise everybody will dream of a MLA and MP and looking after his own family and relatives, and they will be very, very kind of selfish in their aims. So therefore our movements basically are mobilizing people towards their rights. So currently I am doing that, though I am a political party myself.
So it's interesting that the political party that she runs, a lot of the donations that come in from Dalits, she doesn't take, I think, very little or nothing in cash. All of it comes in kind, organizing a conference or something like that, because she's, I think, afraid of the corrupting influence of money when it comes in. Martin, how is the politics around Dalit movements playing out in Gujarat, which we have often been, of course, told is one of the most prosperous states in the country, industrialized, etc. So two related questions. One is, has that changed the lot of Dalits very much in the general prosperity in Gujarat, A? And B, what has been their involvement in politics in Gujarat?
Unfortunately, we are caught or been enslaved into a small frame of atrocities and reservations. That's what the whole Dalit issue gets locked into. I assume and I believe that it is duty of not only Dalit politicians, but every single politician in the country to take on the caste. The kind of anti-untouchability movement that you saw pre-independence era, it's completely absent post-independence. Now, 2 or 3 points. Number one is the very structure of the politics that we have will ensure that no Dalit representative who is loyal to the community will ever get elected. So that means all the people who are elected, because there's not a single parliamentary constituency in India where Dalits have a majority, right? So therefore you're dependent on the voters which are non-Dalits, right? And there's a reason why you will see that all those who are elected, they will never speak up. That's number one. At the village level, they will make sure that this happens especially even among the tribals, that the tribals who are bonded laborers in a house of the person gets elected as a sarpanch, and the master becomes the deputy sarpanch. That's the pattern you will see across all the states. Thirdly, how relevant the political participation is for the whole movement is, number one, it has to do with policies. Yeah. So if you see, after the Modi government has come in the center, one departure that you will be able to see, that there will be more budgetary allocations for the SC/ST sub-plan than we ever had. But end of the year, they will not be spent. And that goes into several hundred crores, right? Unfortunately, this is not picked up by the media and doesn't become a story of discussion. The second thing is, for example, there's a story here of Gujarat. The Dalit population is 7% in Gujarat. But if you look at the figures of all convicts who are in the jail, Dalits comprise 32.9%. Yeah? The same thing happens with the tribals. The third thing is that the aim of the political process was to make sure that you get justice. Now for the Dalits and the tribals, the biggest challenge is the judiciary itself. Look at the Supreme Court, which gave a judgment saying, Dalits and tribals are in the habit of filing fake cases, false cases, and then same getting reversed. Yeah. Without any credible research, the Supreme Court concludes, right, that these are the people who are filing false cases. Or the Supreme Court passing an order that 11,36,000 tribals who are illegally occupying the forest land must be evicted immediately. And then they withdraw their order saying, when the government says maybe we have not scrutinized the papers, which we should before evicting them. Now these are judicial prejudices that we are suffering from. Therefore, what has happened is, being elected, as Sivakami has very correctly said, being an MLA or being a member of parliament is not sufficient. Because even after election, you cannot afford exclusion into the mainstream. Right? 2 days ago, we heard the news that the government again declared that the political reservation will be extended for 10 years more. Right? Without any debate and discussion in the parliament. Originally, when Ambedkar proposed, the political reservations were only for 10 years. Gandhi wanted for 5 years. With an assumption that within 10 years we will have such a strong civil society that reservations will not be required politically.
Something's wrong with the mic. Just take this.
They will not be required. Now the question is, why do we need political reservations even after 73 years? Right? That failure, as an Indian democracy, we are not ready to accept it. And everybody talks about giving compensation, some welfare measures here and there, but we don't accept the fact that the India continues to be one country and two nations. Go to the villages, what constitution? There's a parallel caste system which is stronger than the constitution, right? And the caste rules, not the constitution. So this is a reality, and unfortunately, these debates are not happening either in our assemblies or in the parliaments.
I just want to say that you all are both also saying that all these years of education has definitely come in, there has been improvement, but that has made no difference. Political representation, there has been some improvement certainly, that has made no difference. So at the end of it, what is it that can make a difference? Is anything going to make a difference given how hard set our mindsets appear to be in the terms of caste?
I think I like to answer your question. See, the government policies are all ingrained, the system of exploitation and criminalization of communities. For example, the land policy of the Government of India. So the 1961 Land Reforms Act says that people can have 45 acres of land, 90 acres of land. Where is the parliament debate? How many people are landless? How are you going to apportion? Whom does this act serve? So ultimately they couldn't serve anybody. So they amended the act, and 1972 they brought up another act. By that, every family can have 45 acres. So when I go to village, I ask a Dalit person, I said, how much land you want? He says, 1 acre. So I said, be greedy, ask more. So he's smiling away and he says, oh, 2 acres. So he thought he's being greedy because he thinks that he is going to cultivate the land. But the land is in possession of people who are not cultivating land. So what is the policy meant for, and then how it is going to be useful to the people. Secondly, you see the special component plan. It is introduced for the benefit of the Dalits, but you introduce a clause that there is something called direct and indirect fund. Indirect fund is the, like electricity, it is indirect, I believe, because all the transformers built will serve entire community, so it is very difficult to bifurcate it. But individual houses can be metered and bifurcated and charges could be collected. As a result, 1/5 of the Tamil Nadu budget, which consumes electricity, and now Dalits have no share because they use only one light, majority of them, and they use TV. So they don't have industries, they don't have irrigation projects, they don't have theaters or rice mills. How are they going to use electricity? This is one example. And also several other examples we can quote, how the policy of exploitation is ingrained in our government policies. So therefore they are not benefited. So if only they, in the true spirit of the Dalit development and people's, because first of all they don't ask what people want. They think about NREGP. Look at this program. So many people who are wearing one handful of gold chain, they are found in the lakes sitting there and then taking the money every day because she says, of course, by her own right, everybody is taking money, why not I? There is no work taking place. It is meant for the poorest of the poor. So that's how the government money is wasted on policies and not reaching the poorest of the poor. So how would you expect development to happen? First of all, there are distorted policies, like you procure, this is, you take the paddy from the farmer and you substantiate it by saying that you fix the price, substantiating that it is going to the poor. But neither the poor gets it nor the farmer gets it. It's a very distorted policy for agriculture because if you give the land to the poor, there is no need for procuring paddy from the farmers. So you're procuring at the cost of 17,000 crores and redistribution is 100,000 crores. And then you're wasting government tax money. So if only you give 2 acres of land, there is no procurement policy required. So all are carefully included in the government policies.
So again, it appears to be that there is also an institutional failure over the years. There has been political failures, institutional conspiracies, failures, etc. So it comes down now finally to where we began with the whole question of self-motivation. Now, for example, your political party, as you said, survives on donations from the community itself. Navsarjan Trust, for example, which Martin has been running for so many years. A few years ago, when was it, Martin? Which year? 2 years ago. FCRA, foreign contributions, they were banned from taking foreign contributions. So there is a very to clamp down on some of these, on sources of funds, etc. So when that happened, when foreign contributions were banned, and I think the budgets fell by a substantial amount, and they had to let go of people as well. Martin says now that the trust functions because of 10 rupees, 20 rupees donations from Dalits themselves in villages, and because of that they managed to generate about 80 to 90,000 rupees a month. So obviously there is a very strong conscious effort that we must better ourselves, if no one else will. Martin, is that what is the feeling you get, especially from younger Dalits, as to how they're going to join the new India, as we call it and as we hear?
I think one thing is very clear among the youth I see, and among the children also, that they have made self-respect and dignity as a non-negotiable value, no matter what happens. They will not lay down, no matter what you do, right? And that is what is making the struggle very, very, intense. What I think we need to recognize as a country is that unless and until we understand that when you treat a person untouchable, you also become untouchable at the same time, right? And then if you claim that you are higher, in terms of your status, that dehumanizes you. You are not human being anymore, right? And therefore untouchability for anyone to practice should become a national shame, right? And I think this is what the people are getting very scared of, right? They cannot see, people are becoming independent. Now, one thing what we have been able to do in Gujarat and in the country is we have redefined what a Dalit means. And I say Dalits are those who believe in equality, and Dalits are those who practice equality. Right? It's a wrong thing to say that the Dalits are from a particular caste. No, it's a value of equality that makes you Dalit. Like Martin Luther King said, black is beautiful, right? I think that assertion, right, this is what is going to make, and I would say that, you know, this is the only thing which will strengthen India as a nation. Unfortunately, people say when it becomes a Hindu Rashtra or the Hindutva, it will become, but Hindutva is the other name of a caste system. So the struggle in the country is to have caste or not to have caste, right? We'll see what is going to be the value which is winning in the time to come. I see a lot of hope, because 40 years when I started, you know, at the age of 17, I saw the man from the so-called upper caste entering any home, do anything with the women they want, and nobody could say anything. Today I see children who are very poor, but the respect in their eyes is something you cannot defeat, and this is the hope.
On that note, we'll open it up for a quick couple of. Yes.
We actually have time for only one, so we will combine two questions. Okay? Please go ahead, Abdullah.
My question is from Shivakami. Actually, when we read history, so we talk about the religious policy of kings or emperors, especially in context of the Muslim kings. So we contrast Akbar to the Aurangzeb because of the religious policy. But when it comes to talk about the Dalit policy, it is, I think it has been totally whitewashed in the history. If you watch Bajirao Mastani, there is no mention of the Dalit policy of this Bajirao was atrocious and very bad. So was it done deliberately, and how it is impacting to change our society or something like that?
Dr. B.R. Ambedkar has done a whole lot of exercise, and the term Dalit was coined based on the ontological and epistemological context, because he saw tension between two major religions in the 6th century AD, and that's how the untouchability was created by then. So this really changed the image of Dalits, because the image that you derive when you mention Dalits is the like grave diggers and sweepers and sewage cleaners and unclean people, but he changed the image, saying that they are the early Buddhists. They have been persecuted by the Brahminical religion. So that is what the Dalit means. So therefore, part of his work was on converting people to Buddhism, because they didn't remember the history, and even now people don't remember it. So we keep talking about it. That is the reason, because by the time the Mughals came to India, so the untouchability system was grounded, and it was beyond the perspective of the historians to include, and because most of the history, as you know, is about the kings and not even social history of India was well written. We were waiting for Romila Thapar and D.D. Kosambi to write about them. So therefore, I think by way of neglect. Now, the reinventing history, deconstructing earlier history is part of our work of historians like Amita and activists like us.
Thank you. One quick last question.
First of all, I thank you to Goa Art and Literature Festival to schedule such topic by Shivakami and Martin. I am from Video Volunteer Goa. We are working for community media. Daily we are seeing our videos on atrocity and reservation things. What is the way out of this kind of toleration? Do you think that Ambedkar, what he prescribed through annihilation of caste, is the only way through intercaste marriage? So what is the panacea of getting out of this caste from India? Thank you.
Sorry for asking this question again. As Martin McMahon said, it is the demography of the Dalits that denies them any political to meet their political aspirations because they can't dream of becoming an MLA or MP. But recently that is probably one reason why they try to associate with the leftist parties, political parties. Recently I was in Mumbai and I found one of the Dalit leaders who switched over his allegiance to the so-called Hindutva party, and he was of course accused by others, but he said, we tried being associating with the Congress party, we tried associating with the Communist party, and we have miserably failed everywhere. So why not, we can take chance with this party now. Is this a general phenomenon?
Reservation for everybody on the basis of their caste, religion would be a solution.
I personally advocate there should be 100% reservation. So we have no debates and no discussions about, let the matter end there. Whoever has what percentage population, let them have reservation. I think the challenge for us is that in spite of all the abilities that we have and all the potential that we have, I believe that it is this caste system which is continuously weakening India as a nation, and that we must recognize, right? And if you don't have a strong nation, I think we are going to be colonized again in the whole market economy. That's clear, right? And therefore, I mean, people definitely, because you're left with no options, yeah, politically, right? And what Ambedkar, the reason why he went for reservation, said that people should be loyal to their communities. Unfortunately, the loyalty has shifted to the political party. That's the biggest problem, right? I think I would just say that.
Thank you so much for that outstanding session. P. Shivakami, Martin Makwan in conversation with Samar Alankar. Big hand, folks.
Thanks, Vivek. The format of the session today is that Omaid has a film to sort of screen and then a small presentation where he'll talk more about his work so that people in the audience can get a sense of the kind of work that he's been doing and the kind of context in which he's working. And I guess after that, we'll speak to Omaid and then we'll even throw for questions. So I request the film to be screened first.
All right. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm very honored to be here among you. Been many times to Goa, but this is the first time I'm connecting with the very interesting writers and artists. And this is a great opportunity for us in Afghanistan to really connect on a different level. There's a lot of love, respect, and affection between the peoples of two countries. But I think there is an opportunity to sort of translate this into action, more of in terms of cultural exchanges and artistic exchanges. I think the only thing a lot of Indians know about Afghanistan is through some of the Bollywood movies or maybe the Kabuliwala story from Tagore, and that stopped. So there's so much more to Afghanistan which I grew up in, and that's why I came here to show a bit of what I do with my team in Afghanistan. The short movie that you saw, it's a part of one of the organizations which we founded 5 years ago. The name is Art Lords. So if you know a bit about Afghanistan, there's a lot of negative lords. You have warlords, you have drug lords, you have corrupt lords. So there's a lot of very, very negative and evil lords. We wanted to be the positive lords, the constructive lords. And we stood up against them 5 years ago. And it really started with, if you see this couple of pair of eyes, it is painted on a huge concrete blast wall. They're all over Kabul now, and on most of the provinces in Afghanistan. They cover universities, government offices, embassies, everything. So basically roads are blocked, buildings are blocked, and they are like up to 8 meters high, tall concrete walls. It's because of security, they say. But end of the day, it's in my space, the space that I have to ride my bicycle, the space that I have to walk, the space that I used to drive. So that space is taken from us by these blast walls. And we just decided to bring them down. And the only way to bring down these walls were to paint them. So that's how the whole idea of art lords came to being. And when we saw this as an opportunity and an open canvas for us, we thought that this could be the voice of the voiceless. A lot of Afghans, they do not have that voice. They go through so much corruption, lack of services, insecurity, a lot of radicalization, but they don't have a way or a medium to really raise their voices and their concerns and their solutions. So I thought maybe these canvases are a way that we can engage them and involve them and then ask them about their solutions. Let's see if this works. Yes, it works. So it's Art Lords is a grassroots art for social change movement. What we really wanted to do was we tried to use public art as a tool for changing behaviors and attitudes. For example, you see a lot of, when we are painting, we invite everybody to paint with us. So every mural is done between 50 to 100 people. So this is an opportunity when you come across in that platform, and a country like Afghanistan, in our part of the world where they do not teach you critical thinking in schools and mosques and universities. So this is the place that you can put a seed of doubt in the minds of the children, the adults, and everybody. Help them think and ask questions that why is this happening in your country? And it's all, most of us are volunteers, or we call it artivists. So artists and activists together, using especially murals and graffiti to do our activism. And it's an open stage. Wherever we go, all over the country, we have done over 1,700 murals in 21 provinces under the control of the Taliban, the Daesh, or the government. So any place, we have been there and we have painted murals, and everybody has been welcome to join these murals. And this is sort of a scene. Wherever we go, everybody joins in. And nobody is destroying these murals because that sense of ownership is there. It's their own mural. It talks about their own social issues, about their concerns. If it's fighting corruption, or if it's about women's rights or countering violent extremism, this is their own voice, and they have painted in it. So most of the things I really talked about it, and some of the issues that we are taking up is because of the 40 years of war, and I literally was born when there was war in Soviets, and I grew up and I'm living in a war zone, so I don't know anything else except the violence and the war that happened to us. And most of us in Afghanistan have gone through so much trauma and then mental health issues and all of that. So through this, we also want to reintroduce some of those lost values, which Afghanistan was known to be. So the young generation, they don't have a lot of role models right now who to look. The only people they see is these warlords and people who have armored cars and guns and all of that. So we are trying to take them back when there was a lot of historians, writers, poets, and when our heroes did not have only guns and swords, when our heroes had brushes and pen. So one of the first campaigns I started was I See You, pair of eyes, saying that corruption is not heading from God and people's gaze. So we told all those people, there's a lot of corrupt people in Afghanistan, they're stealing billions of dollars, that we know you're stealing our money. Maybe I cannot take you to justice now, but someday we will take you to justice. So it really went viral and was like all over the country, and people were talking about ICU. Even when I was walking on the streets, people will say, oh, this is the ICU guy. And if I go to a government office, people will try to help me out because they think I'm the ICU guy. And role models. We wanted to introduce a new narrative because, as I said in our constitution, our national hero is a person which is maybe loved by half of the country, not loved by the other half. And then most of our heroes, they either have a gun or had a gun, or had a sword. So you don't have a lot of heroes who are associated with pen and brushes. So we are introducing new heroes. For example, these are the municipality workers. They get like $100 a month salary, and they are cleaning up every city in Afghanistan. So this is my hero, or my hero is a teacher, a nurse. These are the kind of people we are reintroducing in our society. And these are huge murals, like 60 square meters murals all over the city, and main buildings like Presidential Palace, the spy agency, so in the heart of the city. Or countering violent extremism, because what happens is, as Afghans dying has only become numbers. You just hear that 40 people died. Every day, an average of 100 person dies in Afghanistan. It just is a number for a lot of people. So we're trying to make it humanize those numbers, because they're all stories. They're brothers, sisters, they're human beings, for God's sake. So we are trying to put stories of people who died. For example, this one is Qudsiya. She was 21 years old, and she was on the way to school when the explosion happened, and she died. So these are the kind of stories. We are just trying to start a conversation and a discourse about who are you killing? Why are these people dying every day? And of course, transitional justice, there has been a lot of acts of crime against humanity in Afghanistan, and everybody, then they pass a law, impunity law, and everybody is sort of no justice done. So we are trying to find ways that if you're really talking about peace and reconciliation and reintegration, we have to talk about justice as well. So we have to find ways to really heal the wounds of this war and move forward. Examples of the work that we have done: street theater. We have been to parts of the country where people were never ever seen a theater show in their lives, and they're mesmerized when we have the play, and then people join in with our actors. Or music and dancing, because the 40 years of war, what does it to you is that you forget to smile, you forget to be happy, you forget to dance or listen to music. And we are trying to really reintroduce all of those, having music sessions on the streets and in the middle of the markets, having theater shows like this in all the way west of Afghanistan, and encouraging people to find ways to heal themselves through art. If it's painting, if it's dancing, if it's music. These are, for example, music sessions we have with our traditional tabla and rubab, and people coming together in every part of the city. And also we are trying to host many conferences inside Afghanistan, because the problem for us is I cannot take a lot of young Afghans out of the country because nobody gives us a visa. So the only option I have is to bring international people from all over the world to visit Afghanistan and to work with our artists, with our activists, and share their knowledge and information. So we have regular, like at least 2 events a year, where I bring a lot of young people from different parts of the world to engage with Afghans. And of course, art therapy, we go to schools, universities, orphanages, and we try to work with different groups of people. Art residency, we invite a lot of artists to stay with us and share their information. A Chinese artist stayed with us for 2 weeks. And we have a lot of exhibitions all over the world. We have been doing paintings in over 12 countries, different murals. And thank you.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you, Umaid, for the. Hello. Yeah. Thank you, Umaid, for the very extensive range of your work. I just wanted to start by asking something very basic. That what was it for you to grow up in Kabul, and at what point did you think of taking up this work, and what were the reasons that sort of prompted you to take up this work?
So I lived all my life in Kabul. Born in '86 when the Soviet soldiers were in Afghanistan. My dad used to be a police officer, and then he was shot by the Mujahideen. So all my life from a very early age, I came to experience violence and war firsthand within my family. And then we never ever left the city as well, because when the Soviets, the Mujahideen, the Taliban, and the American invasion, all of that happened, and I was in that city. So for me, it was that and when I was a kid, I started working on the streets to feed my family, because you're the elder son of the family and you have to provide. So firsthand, I experienced all the pain and suffering of being in a war zone, going through poverty and all of that. And that really sort of maybe helped me or inspired me to go back to the community and try to find ways to help. And one of the ways that I could help was just going out there to paint these ugly walls. Because what has happened was Kabul was becoming like a prison. So it was suffocating, because every morning I would wake up and the only drive I had, like an hour drive, and then you would only see blast walls, nothing else. So Kabul is a very beautiful capital. We have a beautiful river, we have mountains, we have hills. It's one of the best capitals. But then it's covered by these blast walls. So that really sort of pushed me to go out there and find a solution. And one of the solutions was to go and paint these blast walls, and paint them with messages that could really inspire, or at least like a mural saying people like smile, or flowers, or something beautiful. That, because when you're in a war zone and then you have this thoughts of poverty, war, joblessness, and all of that, and then suddenly you see a beautiful mural, and then you have a break from all those negative thoughts, and you're seeing something very beautiful, inspiring, and encouraging. So I think that really is sort of us giving back to that society.
And I mean, you say most of these murals have been done on the blast walls, and how is, I mean, I assume that state would somehow also be controlling the way in which people can engage with the wall. So have you faced any kind of difficulties or lack of permissions to paint? I mean, what are the logistics of doing this kind of work on a day-to-day basis?
Yes, we have to take permissions. So what happens is that we go to all these government offices or other places, and then we ask them for permissions. Most of the time they give us permissions, sometimes they don't. It's a very lengthy process of negotiations with them, but I don't show them what I will paint. So we will say, okay, we will paint a flower, and then we will paint something against corruption. It's a very, we are walking on a very fine edge with the government. But luckily, I think one thing that I'm really proud of is the freedom of speech and freedom of media which we have in Afghanistan. So I think the last 18, 19 years, this is one of the biggest achievements we have, our constitution and that freedom which we have. We have one of the freest media, I think, in the region. So that really helped us a lot to really get the permissions and do this. But it doesn't come very easy as well. So you face a lot of threats. There were times that there's a one mural which is the pair of eyes, and it's at the presidential palace. So we worked on the mural for like 3 weeks, and it was almost done, and it was getting dark, and the presidential palace guard was telling me to stop because it's getting dark, it's a security issue. But I had all the permissions and everything, so this guy was new, and I was there for 3 weeks. I wanted to get done with it and leave. And this guy was pointing his gun at me and saying that if you don't move, I will shoot you. So these are the kind of situations you face. Or there are times that I get threats from different groups saying that I have become an infidel because I am painting statues of Bamyan, or I am painting woman faces and all of that. So this is the daily part of our struggles. And we have consciously decided to do this, knowing all these threats and challenges that we face. But at the end of the day, it's like, if I don't do it, who will do it? You just have the sense of giving back to your country and trying to find ways to maybe help the society or bring a positive change. I think that sense is really pushing. And also, looking back, when the Soviets left, the generation before me, they all left Afghanistan as well. They settled in Europe and America and all those places. And when I was growing up, there was no one to look back and ask them for what were your mistakes, what was your lessons learned, how can I move forward, what should I do, or what shouldn't I do. So I really grew up in a time that there was nobody to really look for. So I don't want the next generation to grow up like this. At least I will be there to tell my story and tell them what we did to sort of do our responsibility.
So, I mean, what kind of histories of Afghanistan then you would dig up to know to sort of promote the kind of heroes that you want to, let's say, project in terms of cultural sphere and stuff like that? What kind of politicians, writers, painters, if you can just speak about some?
Very simple, like Rumi, Maulana is known to a lot of people in the world. So Maulana was born in Afghanistan, in Balkh, which is in the north of Afghanistan. His dad's madrasa is still there in the district of Afghanistan. So these are the kind of people we are reintroducing, because most of the young Afghans are not really connected or not reading these poems of Sadi or Hafiz or Maulana or Khayyam, and bringing back the sort of the heritage and culture and the poems of Rumi and mixing it with the Islamic calligraphy, which is also part of our history, and making beautiful art, which could be also inspiring, at the same time a bit creative, to help encourage people to really think. So I think these are the kind of works which really goes well with the people. And at the same time, there has been a lot of statesmen, historians in our country that are now forgotten. So you will go to a street in Kabul, and then you will see a big mural of Kaustubh Hazara, which was a very famous historian from one of the minority groups. So these are the and then the person will look at this and go on and read about it. And I hope at the end of the day it will be able to encourage them to look to these role models rather than the ones we have right now.
And as an aside, I just was curious to know, so what is the state of art training institutions in Afghanistan, and what kind of general tendencies there for consuming or sort of art reception? Because since you're doing public art also, you are like putting yourself out there with the most common, I mean, not the people who go to the galleries, for example. So, and also, where do your volunteers sort of come in? What kind of training do they go through at universities?
So the art institutions in Afghanistan, it's really in a good, not a good position, because we have this general national exam, and the lowest score, like the lowest score goes to the art schools. So it's not by choice that you want to be an artist and you will decide to go through some exams and then go to Faculty of Arts. You aim for the engineering or medical school, and then political science, and then economies and business administration, and you fail on all of them, and then they put you into art school. So 80% of the people who go to art schools are people who never wanted to be. And the first day when you go to the art school, the teacher will tell you, if you want to be poor all your life, then welcome. So this is an actual quote from one of the professors. So that is sort of the situation, and it is understandable, because if a country in a war, like art and culture comes all the way, it's not a priority to anyone. But still, most of the people we hire at our companies are people who went to this Faculty of Arts at the Kabul University. Kabul University used to be one of the best universities in Asia at one time. When they graduate, they basically do not have a lot of skills. So we have to find ways to teach them new techniques and introduce them to the new contemporary art, and sort of help them have new books, new experiences, or bring artists from abroad to help them to work with them. So this is one part of the situation. The other part is when you're growing up, I don't know about India, but if you're in France, for example, you at least go to 300 galleries or exhibitions. Your dads will take you in a weekend to different kind of shows, museums. But in my lifetime, nobody took me to a gallery, and this is the case for all of the Afghans. So there was no gallery to go to, there was no exhibitions to go to. So you have to re-educate people about the importance of art and culture, about the importance of going to an exhibition, the importance of collecting art. So I have a gallery in Kabul, and most of the people who come, very rich people, they just pack up 3-4 pieces of art and they just go. So they never think that they have to pay for art. So that's the kind of what is happening at this moment. But then the art also used to be very elite for the royal family and all those people in Afghanistan. Now we are trying to bring art to the ordinary people. Art on the street, exhibitions on the street, everything for the ordinary citizens of Afghanistan. And I think that is changing the culture and the way people are looking at art and culture.
And I was just interested because I also I studied at JNU, which is also like one of these public universities where graffiti and sort of wall art is something that is very essential part of the student culture. So I was just wondering what kind of has your work found resonance in other spaces in and around Afghanistan, like universities or offices and stuff like that?
So when we started doing murals, there was nobody doing it in Afghanistan. We were the first group of people who did it. And then we started graffiti as well, which was very political. So most of the work I do is very political as well. And right now, after 5 years, I would at least in my city, in Kabul, I could count at least 12 groups who are doing different kind of murals, graffiti, and they're very active in the universities. They're active during the nights. So you will be surprised that they can take up any issues, and very, very political issues as well. I think it's the new medium which people are really interested in, medium that the younger generation are more connected with. So I think it's something that could be used in South Asia as well, not only Afghanistan, but all our countries.
Probably just the last question before I open it up for public. What kind of international sort of response or resonance that has your work found? I'm asking, is it in a way has sort of challenged people's commonly held notions about Afghanistan? That I think art has that kind of possibility. And what are your thoughts on that?
I think Afghans are one of the most misrepresented people in the world. The only thing media shows about is the explosion, or we beat our wives, or we do the drugs and stuff like that. So one part, I feel responsible everywhere I go to show a different face of my country. And there's so many more stories in Afghanistan which is not told by anybody, and people do not have the opportunity to go and see it for themselves. So I think I'm just one of those people who have a story like this, and there's thousands of other Afghans who are doing amazing work, and they're trying to be a positive part of the global community. And I think our work has been a bit successful in taking a bit of attention from the global community. We have been fortunate to do paintings all over the world, from DC to Canberra, different exhibitions, different murals, and a lot of international media has written about it. So I think it has contributed somehow to showing a positive and different face of Afghanistan.
That's end from my side, but I would like to open it up for questions from the audience.
Your presentation, as you have yourself said, like everything about Afghanistan we have seen in the media, heard in the media, terribly negative. Taliban, Soviet occupation, American harassment. My question is slightly off topic, and that is the one person who represents Afghanistan to me is Khalid Husseini. I was wondering what the reaction of a Afghani is to this American writer.
Khalid is a jewel of Afghanistan. We are proud of him. He's as much Afghan as I am, and because of the 4 decades of war, some of us were forced to leave our country, to immigrate to Pakistan, Iran, and some other countries. So this is only because of the war that they have left. But what he has written about Afghanistan, it's outstanding. And I love him. I'm in contact with him. I'll have an exhibition in California next month, and I hope he will be there as well.
I'm curious about public reaction to these artworks. That's not something you referred to. And also the reaction and problems, if there are any, especially in working in Taliban territory.
So we have done around 1,700 murals. Only 3 of them have been destroyed. So just imagine in a country like Afghanistan that nobody cares about anything. Only 3 murals, and that is slightly, the 3 murals I did for women was destroyed. One was in front of a notorious warlord, Gulbuddin Hekmatyar. He killed a lot of people, and now he made a peace deal with the government in 2016. He came back, and I did a mural of one of his victims, a lady which was killed in a grocery store in front of his house. And then his gunman came and destroyed the mural. And there was another singer which I did a mural, was destroyed as well. So it shows the level of love and respect of the people. They are protecting the murals because it's part of their community and part of their sort of engagement and their own art. And the last question? Well, I think for them, one of the issues is fighting corruption. Taliban always take credit for being very strict on rule of law and bribery and corruption. So when we did murals around those topics, they were really supportive. So I don't have any clashes with them so far, but I know there are some issues that we have to sort it out, because the only thing that the Taliban banned and they're afraid of is the women of Afghanistan and the art. These are the 2 things that were banned. So we are enemy number 2 in their policies.
Good evening. It's very impressive to learn from you that so much of effort is being put individually by you and your organization, if there is an organization behind you, on trying to project positive thinking in the Afghan people. How long do you think it will take for normalization of things in Afghanistan? Because whenever there is some progress, again there is some bomb blast, some sort of disruption, and it continues. I think from almost about 2000, year 2000, this is going on. We are 20 years down the line, and we don't see any sort of a peace that is being achieved, even by the world community. What is your take on that?
I'm very hopeful, and my name is Omaid, so it's a Persian word, it means hope. So I have to be hopeful. I don't have any other option but to be hopeful. The Americans are talking with the Taliban at this moment. We are really pushing for a ceasefire. I don't know what peace means to a lot of Afghans. The only thing means is a ceasefire, because we are done with this nonsense violence. We need a break from this violence. So I think everyone in Afghanistan are cautiously hopeful about how things are going with Pakistan, how things are going with the Americans, and how the Taliban are talking in Qatar. So hopefully, we know it's a long process, but hopefully soon we will have at least a document that could be signed, and then we can start a process of reintegration and reconciliation among ourselves.
Hello. My question is, first of all, congratulations. I think this is a great initiative. Using art, you can cut across languages and different levels of education and things. My question is about the iconography. What kind of images have you been using that are more successful in Afghanistan? Is it the more modern imagery, or is it traditional imagery? And if you can just help me answer.
Thank you. I think most the visuals, the images are really helpful, because a lot of people cannot read and write in Afghanistan as well. So it really helps them when they see an issue is portrayed in a visual. So they really connect with it and they understand it very well. And the other mediums like TV and radio has been really misused because of the fake news and all of that. So what really connects them is more of traditional ways of portraying any of the issues. So if we use the classic way of painting, if we use the role models from the past, it really resonates well with them. But the contemporary and new ways is a bit so new for them, but they're accepted, but it takes a bit of time for them to understand and really connect well with it. So you have to do a lot of explanation until they get it. But the traditional and classic ways of talking to each other and spreading the message is very welcomed.
At the same question, and in addition to that, I just wanted to ask, what is the scale of the work? Do you think it sort of aids into the relaying the message that you want to try send across better? Like you said that you painted a victim out of this warlord's house. And then secondly, and what kind of other mediums that are you also probably experimenting with, like mixed media and other kind of mediums to sort of project, like projection that comes to my mind?
I think I'm not sure if I got the question right, but murals is one of the ways that we do, and we always select topics and themes which are very important for the country or for the people, like a victim of the war in front of the warlord's house, or anti-corruption, or issues of women's rights, which is a very important topic for us. At the same time, we also use animation, we do short movies, we also use exhibitions, which canvases and mainly on the street, exhibitions on the streets. So these are some of the things we use. And we do it paint by numbers. For example, I sketch it beforehand, and then you just come get this color and a brush, and you just do your part. And after a couple of hours, you will see a beautiful mural. So it's very easier for them to just do the blue part and then see after hours they have contributed to a beautiful and big mural. So I think that really helps and engages a lot of people in Kabul.
Thank you very much, Omaid Sharifi, our first delegate after 10 years at the Goa Arts and Literature.